one of the first things you promised was to legalize marijuana. But since this election campaign started, you haven't expanded on that promise. There's been no pledges. So when can Canadians expect you to legalize pot if you're elected?
I have said many, many times it is our intention to stop Mr. Harper's failed approach on marijuana. Right now, the system that Mr. Harper is defending makes it easier for young people to access marijuana than it is for them to access beer or even cigarettes. And it continues to fund the kind of crime that places like Surrey know all too often is a real challenge for our communities, but that are reflective of what's happening across the country. Mr. Harper's failed approach on marijuana is actually funding criminal organizations, street gangs, and gun runners. We need to base our policies on evidence. That means protecting our kids and removing organized crime from the equation. So the Liberal Party is committed to legalizing and regulating marijuana, controlling it in a way that is going to protect our kids and remove criminal elements from it. And we're going to get started on that right away. We will learn from the best practices of jurisdictions around the world who've moved forward, work with the provinces, and ensure that the goals of protecting our kids, removing the criminal elements from it, and respecting Canadians' choices are fully at the heart of the Liberal approach on marijuana.
So as a source of revenue, it's not there. I appreciate that you have to do research, that you want to go out and take a look at what's going on. But usually, if you're looking over 4 years, you would see something. So can Canadians assume from that at least in the first 4 years you will not be? Because you've told me why it's important, but I still don't know when. When will you legalize?
We are going to get working on it right away. The fact of the matter is that we didn't book for tax revenues from marijuana because we don't yet know exactly what rate we're going to be taxing it, how we're going to control it, or whether it'll happen in the first months, within the first year, or whether it's going to take a year or two to kick in. We are being responsible and prudent in our approach to costing, but make no mistake about it. Mr. Harper's failed approach, which endangers our kids and endangers our communities, needs to stop.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Wake and Bake News, and I'm your host, Shampoo BTA, Kelly Davis. And here we have our last bowl loaded up, and I even kind of had to stretch it out with some scraples. So it's a salad. And I'm going to share my last bowl with the boys while we read news here this morning. And there's lots of exciting news this morning. Wow, are the walls of Jericho falling? Oh, another dead soldier in the trash can. So, I've already filmed Trudeau talking about what the Liberals' stance for legalizing marijuana was in Canada, and the Liberals won yesterday. So now we'll see what they're actually going to do, but it sounds like they're willing to open up the market, and the crackdowns hopefully will back off, or at least now they can all bitch at them about the crackdowns on dispensaries and stuff in Canada. Especially in the cities that have allowed the dispensaries. So we'll take a look at the news about this. This is from reason. Incoming Canadian government plans to legalize marijuana. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau, the next Prime Minister, promises to get started on that right away. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau, Canada's next Prime Minister, ran on a promise to legalize marijuana. The Liberal platform includes this plank, italic added: "We will legalize, regulate, and restrict access to marijuana." Canada's current system of marijuana prohibition does not work. It does not prevent young people from using marijuana, and too many Canadians end up with criminal records for possessing small amounts of the drug. Arresting and prosecuting these offenses is expensive for our criminal justice system. It traps too many Canadians in the criminal justice system for minor non-violent offenses. At the same time, the proceeds from the illegal drug trade support organized crime and greater threats to public safety, like human trafficking and hard drugs. To ensure that we keep marijuana out of the hands of children and the profits out of the hands of criminals, we will legalize, regulate, and restrict access to marijuana. We will remove marijuana consumption and... did you get the fiery flames in your mouth? I hate them.
No.
Just harsh. I hate when a little asteroid comes down my hits you in the mouth. It's like, I say this all the time. Okay. Stronger laws to punish more severely those who provide to minors, those who operate a motor vehicle while under its influence, and those who sell it outside of the new regulatory framework. We will create a federal, provincial, territorial task force, and with input from experts in public health, substance abuse, and law enforcement, will design a new system of strict marijuana sales and distribution with appropriate federal and provincial excise taxes applied. While the U.S. states led the way by becoming the first places in the world to legalize and regulate marijuana in 2012, says Marijuana Majority Chairman Tom Engel, it looks like Canada could soon leapfrog ahead of us and become the first country in North America to legalize cannabis nationwide. Canada already allows medical use of marijuana, and last June, the Supreme Court of Canada unanimously ruled that qualifying patients have the right to obtain not just dried buds, but any form of cannabis they find useful. Now, the Liberals intend to eliminate penalties for marijuana use and establish something like a Colorado-style system of licensing and regulating marijuana businesses serving the recreational market. We're going to get started on that right away, Trudeau told CTV last month. Legalization is also supported by the New Democratic Party, which currently controls the second largest bloc in Parliament, but fell to third place in yesterday's election, as well as the Green Party, for Libertarian Party, and the Marijuana Party. Bloc Quebec's support decriminalization of possession for personal use. By contrast, the current Prime Minister, Tory Stephen Harper, is an unreconstructed drug warrior who recently called marijuana infinitely worse than tobacco, although he had trouble backing up that claim. Harper tried to use Trudeau's support for legalization against him, apparently with little success. The Liberals won 184 seats in the 338-member House of Commons, up from 34 compared to the Conservatives' 99, down from 159. The recent CBC survey found that 59% of Canadians favor legalizing marijuana, while another 30% would eliminate criminal penalties for marijuana use. Although only 38% of Conservatives support legalization, another 37% favor decriminalization, and just 26% wanted to maintain criminal penalties for users. So in other words, by electing Trudeau, Canada basically has decided to legalize recreational use of marijuana and open up their market ahead of America, who's still trying to wait for some of that research to come through that we're supposed to be getting here from our federal government that uses science to make its decisions with, right? We do that, right? Isn't that what we heard Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about on Star Talk when he was interviewing Bill Clinton about how the U.S. government is using science to make decisions? Sure they are. And not politics. Sure they are. Okay. My next story, hot on the heels of this story, is that Mexico's Supreme Court is now going to examine the constitutionality of marijuana prohibition. Mexico, close to legalizing marijuana as Supreme Court discusses allowing it for recreational use. You know, it's not looking good for American prohibition, is it? High hopes for the legalization movement. Mexico could be close to legalizing marijuana as the country's Supreme Court gears up to discuss the issue later this month. The Supreme Court will be discussing a proposal that would legalize consumption and production of marijuana for recreational use. Mexico has already approved medical use of the drug. As a lower court in the country granted a couple the right to import marijuana-based medicine to treat their daughter's epilepsy in August. Since recreational use of the drug has been made legal in several U.S. states, political pressure has been mounting on Mexico to follow suit. On the 28th of October, the Supreme Court judges will be voting on whether the federal health law, which currently prohibits recreational marijuana, should be declared unconstitutional. Cannabis is now legal in several countries around the world: the Netherlands, Spain, 4 U.S. states, and several South American countries have legalized it for recreational use. For medicinal use, it's legal in 25 U.S. states. And really, Mexico has been talking about getting out from underneath the yoke of the drug war for a long time. Vicente Fox has been going around talking about how, hey, look, this was your stupid idea, you know, and you're legalizing, and now what? It looks pretty foolish. Those treaties that we have with countries all over the world to maintain the drug war looks pretty damn foolish when we can't touch the states that have legalized. And we'll be talking about that in a minute too. Okay. We're going to touch on a story that came up yesterday, and that they're trying to spin it as Gavin Newsom is giving, you know, marijuana reform, putting it on the back burner. But actually what's happening is Gavin Newsom is introducing gun control in California, which is the real story, and the way that we bury the lead is to make it sound like he's abandoning marijuana legalization or something. Okay, for years, cannabis legalization in California has carried an air of inevitability, with Oregon's legal weed stores opening this month and with sales there brisk. California is now the only West Coast state where adults over 21 can't buy without, sorry, I'll put the rest in.
Oh, it's fine.
Lost my place. Can't buy marijuana without a doctor's recommendation, and with polls showing a majority of Americans in favor of the end of cannabis prohibition, even in Texas, the attitude has been that this is a sure thing. This is problematic. It is not a sure thing. And there are increasing signs that legalization is in real trouble. You know, it's going to be pretty ridiculous for California if Mexico legalizes and Canada legalizes and everyone on all of our borders is legal except for California. I don't think it really matters very much if the ballot measures in disarray or not now. The walls of Jericho are collapsing around you. You have to follow suit, or you're going to be standing alone in a whirlwind of pain, you know. They don't have a choice. Okay. So they're spinning it as, oh my goodness, we're not going to get legalization. Okay, last week, Lieutenant Governor Gary Newsom, who endorsed legalization shortly after Colorado and Washington went legal in 2012 and who is running for governor in 2018, announced that he is backing a ballot initiative on gun control. That is a heavy lift, and one that might take precedence over legalization. Might. Notice that we had 2.5 paragraphs about how he's abandoning legalization, but in just the small section of this paragraph, the word might blows those last 2 paragraphs away like dandelions, like they don't even matter, like this. Who is this who's writing this silliness? San Francisco Weekly News. Oh, stop, you idiots. Childish behavior, really it is. You think I'm not going to pick up on these subtle things? Okay. So, basically, he is going to introduce gun control. Newsom's position is the legalization situation can't be understated. While disavowing any use of the plant itself, see, we still are talking about marijuana. Let's talk about the gun control issue, the initiative that he's going to be introducing. But lately, when cannabis advocates, see, so it goes in and in, then we get back to gun control. Newsom's gun control push is for a ban on high-capacity ammunition, magazines, and restrictions on ammo sales. To do that, he'll have to take on the NRA, which will keep the gubernatorial candidate so busy he will have little time to keep deeply involved with the other initiatives he has been close to in recent years. Legalization, recreational marijuana being one of those, I guess. So what? Nobody was expecting him to lead the charge. Now he's going to take the political clout. See, what's really happening here is he's taking the political clout he's built now from his gold, blue ribbon commission on marijuana. He's already said everything he needs to say on marijuana. It's already written, and can be drawn upon during the election. And don't think that the Blue Ribbon Commission is not going to be brought up quite a bit, and not just here. But Canada's going to need a model, and they're going to be looking not just at Colorado, okay? What he's saying is that he has enough political clout going into 2018 that he now feels confident enough he can take on the NRA. That's what this story really tells me. And it's like, wow. And that means that marijuana political clout can get you elected to Prime Minister of Canada and beat a Tory incumbent. It can get the Mexico's Supreme Court to take you seriously, because now they actually have to examine the issue and not just avoid it. Okay? Alright, so the next thing I'm going to read you is more signs that things are happening. Sun Times Network extract. Mark Zuckerberg blasts U.S. marijuana policy, calls for prison reform. Now, to me, this sounds like somebody that's about to plunk down some cash on some kind of a political initiative or candidate. Mark Zuckerberg adds his voice to the prison reform debate. Facebook co-founder Zuckerberg is speaking out against marijuana laws and calling for prison reform after spending a day in California's San Quentin prison. Zuckerberg took a trip to the Bay Area facility last week after reading The New Jim Crow, a book by Michael Alexander that examines the ties between mass incarceration and racial injustice in America. In an impassioned Facebook post, Zuckerberg explained that he wanted to see firsthand what prison conditions are like for people. He calls out U.S. marijuana policy for being particularly racially unjust, and writes, "We can't jail out our way to a just society, and our current system isn't working." Sound familiar? Sounds just like what Justin Trudeau's just said. Okay, so the mantra begins. The talking points are in place. U.S. jails hold around 2.4 million people. About 25% of the world's prisons, black and Hispanic, are significantly more likely than whites to be arrested for possession and sale of marijuana, and to receive a conviction and criminal record, even though the majority of marijuana users are non-Hispanic whites. Case in point. Almost anybody Hispanic in here? Nope. How many marijuana smokers? Please raise your hand. 3, thank you. Case in point. Okay. Almost 40% of prisoners are black. More than half the people entering prison live below the poverty line. Our entire society pays the price for an unfair, broken system. Well, it isn't just that they live below the poverty line. Once in prison, you're used to, for all kinds of labor. Now you're a free labor. You can make license plates. You can work on the side of highways. Let my people go. Let my people go. Today, Priscilla and I visited San Quentin Prison. What is this stuff that's in the way? Wait, for some reason all the words are gone. Let's reduce the size. Today, Priscilla and I visited San Quentin Prison. Earlier this year, I read the new Jim Crow study of how the U.S. judicial system disproportionately criminalizes and jails blacks and Latinos. We wanted to see firsthand what prison conditions are like for people, and we got a chance to speak with inmates and staff. U.S. jails hold around 2.4 million people. About 25% of the world's prisoners, black and Hispanic, are significantly more likely than whites to be in prison for marijuana. I guess that's what I say. Whites to be arrested for possession and sale of marijuana and to receive a conviction and criminal record. Even though the majority of marijuana users are non-Hispanic whites, almost 40% of prisoners are black. More than half of the people entering prison life below the poverty level. San Quentin has one of the best track records of people not returning to jail in the country. They run programs to teach valuable skills to help inmates find jobs and avoid criminal activity. In this photo, I'm talking with inmates who are taking a coding course. I was impressed by their spirit to return to their communities and to provide for their families, as well as dedication of the staff to help them reclaim their lives. Making our criminal justice system fair and more effective is a huge challenge for our country. I'm going to keep learning about this topic, but some things are already clear. We can't jail our way to a just society, and our current system isn't working. Yep, that sounds like somebody that's going to put some money where their mouth is sooner or later. And he's got the money to push candidates and positions that agree with the position he just stated. Alright, on to the next thing, and it just gets better. This is one of those days where the stories are like boom, 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 boom. Oh, it's big, it's big, it's big. Court. Feds can't shut down state legal cannabis business. Apparently there has been a groundbreaking ruling by this judge here in the Supreme Court in California that basically tells the feds that now that they have a strong regulatory system set up in California, that they need to get their hands the fuck off our dispensaries. And they got no business up in here. And they need to take a long walk off a short pier. So let's see what he says. Court feds can't shut down states' legal cannabis business. Federal marijuana prohibition still stands. Let's wait for the phone thing to be over. Okay. It was Nana calling. She got an appointment we gotta go deal with. Okay. Federal marijuana prohibition still stands, but enforcing the federal ban in states where cannabis is legal just became a lot harder. If not impossible. Just as Congress intended. Giving legal support for an earlier move by Congress, a federal judge in California ruled Monday that the federal Justice Department is forbidden. Let me say that again. Forbidden. Verboten. Get the fuck up and out of here, man. It's time for you to take your dog and pony show and go sell your fucking snake oil somewhere else, pal. Give legal support for an earlier move by Congress. A federal judge ruled Monday that the federal Justice Department is forbidden from prosecuting or otherwise interfering with cannabis operations that are in compliance with state law. In a blistering smackdown to federal drug cops that could soon become a landmark ruling, U.S. District Court Judge Charles R. Breyer affirmed that recent actions in Congress prohibiting the DEA and U.S. attorneys from taking action against California's heavily regulated medical marijuana dispensaries. The ruling passed the way for a Martin County-based medical cannabis dispensary to reopen. It may also pave the way for other dispensaries shuttered during the federal crackdown in 2011 and 2012 to reopen. Let my people go. Hey, Pharaoh, you better back the fuck up. It could also mean a new level of fever pitch for the state's multi-billion-dollar cannabis industry. After all, if the feds can no longer stop it, who can? Sounds like somebody's riding their ass right into the kill box. That would be prohibitionists. Mexico, Canada, legalize, then, oh well, there's something coming from the UN too. They start turning their backs on you. You find yourself quite alone. It could also mean a new level of fever pitch for the state's multi-billion-dollar cannabis industry. Earlier this year, Congress passed an amendment to the Justice Department's budget that prohibited the feds from spending funds to interfere with the state's medical marijuana laws. While the Controlled Substance Act is untouched and cannabis is still a Schedule I drug, the intent of the words of the bill, co-sponsored U.S. Rep. Sam Farr, was to assure the law-abiding California cannabis industry that the feds just can't come in and bust him. Attorneys for marijuana provider Lynette Shaw, who ran a dispensary in Fairfax, called the Martin Alliance for Medical Marijuana from 1997 until a federal forfeiture action closed it in 2012, argued that the budget amendment, which is in effect only until next year, unless renewed by Congress, means that an earlier permanent injunction ordering it close and barring Shaw and several others figures in Bay Area weed lore from working in the industry no longer stand. Federal marijuana prohibition, including the Controlled Substance Act, still stands, but as Breyer ruled, it is now very difficult, if not impossible, for the Federal Justice Department to do anything about states' cannabis growers, sellers, and distributors, as long as the state law is being followed. The plain reading of Congress amendment forbids the Department of Justice from enforcing this injunction against MAMMs to the extent that MAMM operators in compliance with California law, Breyer wrote, operates in compliance with California law. To the court's recollection, Breyer added, the government has yet to allege or even suggest that MAMM was at any time operating in violation of state law. Breyer also had harsh words for acting U.S. Attorney Brian J. Strong. Strong's attorneys argued that federal raids could continue because raids did not interfere with California's implementing a law. That argument so tortures the plain meaning of the statute that it must be quoted to ensure credible articulation, Breyer wrote. Ooh. I wish I was there to hear that one. That argument so tortures the plain meaning of the statute that it must be quoted to ensure credible articulation. In other words, people aren't even going to believe that that came out of your mouth unless we write it down. To implement, of course, means to carry out, accomplish, to give practice, effect to, and ensure of actual fulfillment by concrete measures, he added. It defies language and logic for the government to argue that it does not prevent California from implementing its medical marijuana laws by shutting down the same heavily regulated dispensaries. This ruling is a tipping point in the country's struggle over the cannabis plant. Shaw's attorney, Greg Anton, told NBC Bay Area, the law is clear. There will be no funds extended for interfering with California's state medical marijuana laws, he said. Not only that, but they've also been barred from using any funds that they have taken from people in searches or whatever by using, oh, I smelled marijuana in your car and now I get to take your car or whatever, and they sell it. They don't get to use those funds either. No funds. No funds. They're going to starve them out. It'll work because they don't make money. They're not supposed to be a money-making operation. This is not supposed to be for-profit policing, okay? Okay. To implement, of course, means to carry out. Okay, I've read that. The ruling is a tipping point. Shaw's dispensary had a license from the town of Fairfax, as well as staunch support from the town's mayor and chief of police, who was responsible for creating MAMM's unique permit. Sometimes the rule of law is a good thing for cannabis. MAMM was possibly one of the first dispensaries in the country to receive a local permit. It was the only dispensary serving Marin, which historically has high rates of breast cancer. Town Mayor Larry Bragman wrote to former U.S. Attorney Melinda Haig in 2014. Well, that hag is no longer around either. Oh, the match is lit. Alright. The business will remain closed for now. Shaw's old landlord is barred from renting to her, and Shaw herself at one point owed over $3 million in back taxes to the IRS. That doesn't appear to matter now that Shaw's 60, a former libertarian candidate for governor. The ruling means we're allowed to reopen. The new MAMM Shaw posted to her GoFundMe page last night. I am seeking investors. I am now Fed-proof. And so, by extension, is the entire California cannabis industry, which would appear poised to blow up even further at the moment. Actions taken by the state legislature early this year have specifically legalized for-profit commercial cannabis activities in California, so long as the operations follow local laws. Shaw and the industry are only Fed-proof as long as Congress keeps renewing the budget amendment or make it permanent. The Fed's forfeiture actions are still pending against two other Bay Area dispensaries, Harbor Health Center and Berkeley Patients Group. So in other words, we're going to see Steve D'Angelo win chicken dinner. Winner, chicken dinner. Yeah, okay. But with momentum like this, the next step could be amending the CSA entirely. We won the war, Shaw told Smell the Truth, David Downs, and I'm the first POW to be released. Winner, chicken dinner! Alrighty. Now we'll get to this next story, which is it's just like a big snowball. Now it's big. It's huge. UN may recommend decriminalizing drug use. This was posted yesterday. Anti-drug war initiatives have been building for years. The United Nations is preparing to call on governments around the world to decriminalize drug use, according to Virginia Group founder Richard Branson, who says he received an advance statement. The UN's Office on Drugs and Crime would recommend decriminalizing drug use as well as possession of all drugs for personal consumption, Branson said, which could encourage a host of member UN nations to change their drug policies. This is a refreshing shift that could go a long way to finally end the needless criminalization of millions of drug users around the world, wrote Branson, who is an advocate for drug policy reforms and has worked with the UN. We should treat drug use as a health issue and not a crime. The recommendation would likely have no legal weight, as the UN does not oversee drug policies in its member nations. However, we who are having states legalize and the federal government, centralized government, cannot stop this from happening. And now Canada has elected leadership that wants to legalize, and Mexico is starting to talk about it. Think about what's going on here. What's really happening is this is all allowing our president to be able to say something. We dug a big deep hole for ourselves. It's not going to be easy to climb out of it. And we're going to need friends. We got to have friends. Remember how we had some kind of North American compact with Mexico and Canada? Yeah, I think that still exists. And if they're deciding to legalize, it must be because we've already decided that's what is going to happen. Just how do we get there? And how do the rich people maintain control of it? That's what I'm thinking anyway, from my tiny little window looking out at the world. The recommendation would likely have no legal weight at the UN. Well, practically nothing the UN really does has weight. Momentum has been growing in recent years in favor of rolling back strict drug laws. The Global Commission on Drug Policy called for legalization in September 2014 and included UN Secretary General Kofi Annan among its commissioners. Four U.S. states and the District of Columbia have made it legal to purchase marijuana, and Portugal, Uruguay, and other nations have taken significant steps in recent years to decriminalize drug purchases. telling you, man, it's like the dominoes are falling. It's getting really serious. Alright, so the next thing is that if you notice, a lot of the candidates have used this, oh, well, we need more research. And what have I been saying? That the way the federal law is set up, you're not allowed to say anything positive about marijuana. If you're a DEA agent or some kind of scientist involved with this research, you are not allowed to do any research that is going to show its medical efficacy. It's like a catch-22. So what happened was when they went to the place, I guess in West Virginia, wherever it is, this college where they grow marijuana for these studies, for the federal government, and these samples are supposed to go out to laboratories to be tested to see the potency and if, whatever, blah, 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 they found out there was nothing growing there. And why was there nothing growing there? Because they weren't testing anything. And they hadn't been growing any marijuana there for years. And the reason was because it was kind of it was a sham. Basically, it was a staged thing, right? They say they have this lab where they're testing stuff, but they're not growing any weed. It's like the size of a playground. It was just a facade to keep the drug war going. To say, oh look, we have this and we've tested it and it proves how dangerous it is. Well, they were growing these plants in something that was smaller than playgrounds that I've been responsible for. How in the hell can you tell me that you've been testing the marijuana strains from all over the world to see what their danger level is or any of this kind of shit? It just sounds like you're lying. So here, the Brookings Institute has now come out today and said that the federal government pretty much is blocking any research to prove the medical efficacy of marijuana, and it's putting us behind. Once again, they're not using science to decide things, they're using politics and bias and faith, whatever their belief systems are, and not like logic and reason like maybe we should, and that way we can save people's lives. Ending the U.S. government's war on medical marijuana research. Of all the controlled substances that the federal government regulates, cannabis is treated in unique ways that impede research. Specifically, the U.S. government has held back the medical community's ability to conduct the type of research that the scientific community considers the experimental gold standard in guiding medical practices. Thus, the use of cannabis for medical treatment is happening in states based largely on anecdotal or limited science. In many cases, patients and doctors operate according to a learn-as-you-go approach, a situation that is inexcusable, the fault of federal policies failing to keep pace with changing social views and state-level legal landscape. Now, what did I say? Centralized government is not going to be able to move out of the way. It's a lumbering dinosaur, and that is not good. So what have we done? We've decided we don't need you on this issue. We're kicking you out of here. You stop deciding this stuff for us. You don't live here. You're basing your decisions on stuff. You're taking too fucking long to catch up with the people that are actually living it here, like in California, Colorado. Okay. So in my opinion, more evidence of the fall of centralized government. They cannot react fast enough. They cannot make that corner. They have to attack. It's not good. In ending the U.S. government's war on medical marijuana research, author John Huddick and Grace Wallach argue that it is time for the federal government to recognize the serious public policy risk born from limited medical, public health, and pharmaceutical research into cannabis and its use. As medical marijuana becomes increasingly accessible in states' regulated legal markets and as other self-medicated in jurisdictions that do not allow the medical use of cannabis, it is increasingly important that the science community conduct research on the substance. However, statutory, regulatory, bureaucratic, and cultural barriers have paralyzed science and threatened the integrity of research freedom in this area. Hodak and Wallach explore the specific federal government policies that limit medical marijuana research and detail the consequences of those policies of the medical community and the public policy. They also examine some of the existing proposals that seek to ameliorate these challenges, including that some are meaningful and would make substantive changes that advance medical research, while others are narrow-sighted, misunderstood, and fail to provide the type of large-scale change necessary to achieve reform desired goals. Analyzing the efficacy of one often proposed solution, the rescheduling of marijuana from Schedule I narcotic, Hodak and Wallach argue that this specific policy proposal is limited in its ability to advance construct medical research. Ultimately, the authors recommend a more comprehensive set of policy reforms that will liberate the medical community in its pursuit of research into marijuana. I have heard that not everybody is happy with the rescheduling of marijuana because you're still saying something that's not entirely true. You're just dropping it down a notch so somebody can get a hold of it and actually begin to go to the change. Maybe they're suggesting just cut to the chase. Let's just change it. Let's just stop lying about it and just do this right. Okay, so the last story that I wanted to do was kind of funny, and it was about this billboard in Arizona that is, it basically is taking advantage of the Halloween spirit to make fun of the fear-mongering that goes behind marijuana. So let's see if I can, I was going to turn this around. Let's see if we can find an actual video. This is a better picture of the billboard, so I'll show you this. Okay, so Arizona marijuana legalization campaign launches Halloween-themed billboard. Ad satirizes reefer madness style propaganda comes as opponents ramp up efforts to scare voters into keeping marijuana illegal for adults. Phoenix, backers of a proposed 2016 ballot initiative to end marijuana prohibition in Arizona, launched a Halloween-themed billboard Monday morning that highlighted the relative safety of marijuana compared to alcohol. The orange and black ad, which satirized reefer madness style anti-marijuana propaganda, comes as opponents of the proposed initiative are ramping up efforts to scare voters into keeping marijuana illegal for adults. It features a screaming face and reads, "Marijuana! Less toxic, less addictive, and less scary than alcohol." Marijuana is illegal thanks to decades of anti-marijuana propaganda and fear-mongering, said campaign chairman J.P. Hoyek. Once people find out it is actually safer than alcohol, they tend to agree it should not be a crime for adults to use it responsibly. Over the next 12 months, our opponents are going to do everything they can to scare Arizonans into keeping marijuana illegal. Holoyak, said, we just want voters to remember that they were talking about a substance that is proven to be less harmful than alcohol. Marijuana dependency is significantly less likely and less severe than alcohol dependency, according to the researchers at the National Academy of Science, Institute of Medicine, and the National Institute of Drug Abuse. The Centers of Disease Control and Prevention attribute more than 2,000 U.S. deaths per year to alcohol poisoning, whereas there has never been a confirmed marijuana poisoning death in history. More information about the relative potential harms of marijuana and alcohol is available at this website that they provide. Nobody is saying marijuana is harmless, but the scientific and medical communities are saying it is less harmful than alcohol. Hoyok said, it's time to put the reefer madness in the past. Our marijuana laws should be based on facts instead of fear. Yep. Okay, so that's my show for Tuesday. And now I am officially bankrupt, which is probably good. Give me a break. And sometime next week I'm supposed to get my new crowns, and I don't have to have the candy corn teeth for Halloween anymore. I smile at people, I see them and go, oh my god. Scary looking. They are not attractive. And they wiggle. That's what wiggles. Oh, life is fun. I'm enjoying it. Did our running again today. Went further than before. I am amazed that every day I do so much more. Plus, it's nice and cool in the morning, and that makes it a lot easier. It's not like already 70 degrees and you're trying to jog slowly up a hill. Alright, so take care of yourself. Fist bump, blow up. Huge stories today. And as you can see, everything ties in. Okay, last thought. Look at how Hillary Clinton has asked for more research. Well, Hillary, more research can't be done. So what is your recommendation now? Not that I expect her to be somehow like Trudeau, the presidential candidate's like, I'll legalize everything once I get in office. I understand you can't do that, but you're going to have to come off of that. You're going to have to pivot faster. You're going to get run over by this thing. It's already helping Bernie Sanders more than you. Getting him in your campaign, I think, would be a very good idea. But who knows how that's going to turn out. We still have a long road ahead as far as the election's concerned. And there's all kinds of talk about, oh, California, I don't know if you're going to legalize, I don't know, everything, so, I don't know. Well, Canada just did it by electing this liberal leader and the Liberal Party that has promised to legalize it. The UN is saying to do it. We've already got one Silicon Valley guy that's talking about maybe throwing money in on his own proposition, and now the guy from Facebook sounds like he's talking about handed some checks down to some legalization campaign, so I wouldn't count us out. Especially with Mexico talking about maybe legalizing. That'll change the equation. You'll see California literally trip over itself to catch up. We won't have a choice then. We're being surrounded. Legalization will be on all borders. We will have to fall. We're just a domino. We're gonna fall sooner or later. So it's just gonna happen. Sorry. I know, it's fun to make things dramatic, but it's pretty much in the stars. You can already see it happening. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's an amazing time to be alive. It's nice to be here after being born in 1965 and living throughout as a child through the early 60s and the 70s, and then the 80s and 90s, and all the Republicans I've had to go through, and, oh my gosh, just a really long journey, right? To this point, I really like being here. This is a great time to be me and be alive. Female stoner. Good time to be alive. Very happy for all the other stoners out there, especially my Canadian stoners. I can't wait to hear how they feel about, of course, you should be suspicious, you know, because they're not going to be able to just turn it over. They've got their own idiots that are profiteering off of prohibition. But as you can see, the United States is finding a way to kick them in the nuts and hurt them bad, you know, and that can happen for you too, especially when you have a majority in your parliament. So, enjoy that thought. See you tomorrow. I don't expect tomorrow to be as exciting as today was news-wise. Today was huge. Alright, so take it easy. Adios.